After the previous Fight Pass Invitational, we learned that if we're going for a single leg and our opponent threatens a guillotine, it's going to make it easier for us to run the pipe. Because by attempting a guillotine, that means they have a lot of connection to us. And we can see other examples of this happening, including one from the recent Fight Pass event. Another key takeaway from the previous event is we saw Marigali trap the arm from the back and lock a bottom side body triangle. Now, I first learned about this from hearing Gordon talk about it, and J-Rod was able to implement it beautifully.
I saw some guys competing at the last FPI doing the same kind of arm trap stuff, so I started working on it. Clearly very effective.
So it's important to see what we can learn from these professional events. And in this recent Fight Pass Invitational, there were a lot of rear naked chokes. But I'm going to hold off on talking about these because I'm in the process of making a proper video talking about finishing from the back. So I'll wait to discuss it there. Cool? So let's dive in and see what we can learn from the Fight Pass Invitational 6. In his match with Nicky Rod, Roberto used an inversion from reverse de la Hiva to enter into cross Ashi. Very, very similar to the way Gordon did in ADCC. But Nicky was very quickly able to escape the position and free his knee. Now, traditionally when you're defending cross Ashi, it's considered to be a bit risky to be on the same hip as the leg that's being attacked. Because if we're turning to our right and they're attacking our right leg, we're exposing our own heel for a strong finish.
There it is!
So if we're diving into escapes from cross Ashi, as a general rule, I think you're going to see people take the posture of turning away from their opponent, putting themselves on the opposite hip of the leg that's being attacked. And what this does is create a situation where our knee is inside the line of our hip and foot, making it difficult for the attacker to get a good catch on our heel. So if we're hiding our heel, we're trying to keep our knee inside the line of our hip and foot, which generally means whichever leg they're attacking, we want to be on our opposite hip. And if we get taken to the same hip that they're attacking, it generally means our heel is going to be exposed. However, if your knee is already free, now things change a bit, because now if they're attacking your right leg and you turn to the opposite hip, you give them the ability to climb your leg and recapture your knee.
Connor should have started turning to the opposite, like sat all the way down to the floor to stop his leg getting pulled through, but he decides to sit up and starts turning the opposite way. It gives Taylor the opportunity to shoot his knee behind and capture the knee line.
Now this kind of makes perfect sense, right? Because if someone's trying a Kani Basami into our legs, if they're trying to backstep into our right leg, we're trying to fall to that same side hip and make sure our knee stays outside the line of our foot and hip to prevent them from capturing our knee and entering into cross Ashi. Compared to a situation like this where we're falling to our right hip and our left knee is pointed directly at our opponent and is inside the line of our hip and foot, which means the attacker is going to be able to complete that Kani Basami and capture our knee. Another great example would be if we're attacking from a rear body lock with our foot in between our opponent's legs. We can expect them to do a forward roll and try and enter into our legs. And if they can create a situation where our knee starts to bend inside the line of our hip and foot, they're gonna enter into our legs. So a lot of people would just say it's wrong to put your foot in between their legs from a rear body lock. But having your foot in the middle can lead to things like foot sweeps that help you break your opponent down and take their back. So it's fine to have your foot in the middle, just make sure your knee is pointing away from your opponent, which means your knee is outside your hip and foot. So now when they try and roll into your legs, it's going to be very hard for them to capture your knee. And when they try, you can look to throw in one hook. But it's not a conventional hook. For a conventional hook, we're going to have our left leg hooking their left thigh. But sometimes this can be hard to achieve. So we can initially use our right leg to hook their left thigh before passing it off to our left hook and taking the back. And this is something J-Rod did beautifully, where he would like to insert his right leg as a hook. But his opponent is already falling to their far shoulder and Jay is a bit behind. So he uses his left leg to hook the right leg to enter into a top wedge. And from the wedge, he tries to roll through and pass that hook off to his right leg. But he fails to do so and they reset. Even Pedro tried to do this off this beautiful foot sweep. But then halfway through, he realized he's Pedro Mourinho and he shouldn't be doing this type of thing. So all of this is just to say that if your left leg is being attacked and you're on your left hip and your knee is free, generally it's going to be a good idea to stay on your left hip because it keeps your knee outside your hip and foot. And it's going to be hard for the attacker to recapture your knee. And you can work to high step and threaten a guard pass. And this is exactly what Nicky Rod did the first time his legs were entangled. He frees his left knee, stays on his left hip, and heists up to threaten the body lock. If you're looking for something more fancy, you can dive into these cross Ashi escapes that led to the wedge. But the same idea applies. If they're attacking our right leg and we're on our right hip with our knee free, we don't turn away from our opponent, we turn towards them. And Danaher teaches this here.
Now post our hand on our training partner's leg, we plant that other foot on the mat, and we heist, and we take our knee into this kind of position. Now we just step everything over the top. We're in perfect position now to take our training partners back.
So if you're Nicky Rod in this situation here with your left leg being attacked but your knee is free, what you cannot accept is being turned onto your right hip, which is what happened and is why Roberto was able to climb the leg, recapture the knee, and enter into cross Ashi. Now once he lands in cross Ashi, Roberto quickly passes the leg over to inside Ashi and starts attacking an outside heel hook, which is exactly what Taylor did in the European trials. So between climbing the leg and this Passover to inside Ashi, these two sequences are very, very similar. And Gordon also used the same Passover to inside Ashi against Nicky in ADCC, and he was able to get a quick finish. Now after digging for the heel, Roberto takes a grip that I'm not too familiar with, but I've seen Diego Pato use it, so it's gotta be pretty good. But Nicky's able to escape, resulting in a toe hold shootout. So credit to Nicky for working on his leg lock defense and staying calm in this very dangerous situation. And I think this also speaks to how nasty of an outside heel hook Gordon Ryan has.
Gordon has a absolutely ferocious outside heel hook. Until you felt it, it's quite different.
So from reverse de la Hiva, Roberto was able to invert and enter into cross Ashi, but Nicky was quickly able to free his knee. Now Roberto was able to guide Nicky towards his right hip and force Nicky's left knee inside the line of his foot and hip, which means Roberto was able to climb the leg and recapture the knee and threaten his attacks. Now to me, this sequence was the craziest part of the event, and a reminder of inside heel hook defense and the importance of knee position. Because if it's free, it makes sense for you to fall to that same side hip to prevent your opponent from climbing your leg and recapturing your knee. But if your knee is entangled and you fall to that same side hip, now you're playing with fire.
I know it takes a little bit of getting used to psychologically to think that this is unsafe and this is safe, right? Well, that's not much of a difference.
And I think it's important to note that when talking about inside heel hooks, from the data that I have, 63% of the finishes came from cross Ashi, and 67% of them were on the right leg. So this may be a good place to start when working on inside heel hook defense. Now, obviously, there were a lot of other things we could have touched on throughout the event, but I wanted to focus on this specific takeaway and not chase too many shiny objects, because I didn't want to get too distracted from my study on finishing from the back. And if you're interested in the tool I use to study, it's called the Outlier Database, and the link is in the description below. And if you sign up, you'll get access to the Discord, which now has over 1,000 nerds just like you. So I'll talk to you there or see you in the next video.